According to the Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy, a Tibetan woman named Tsering Tso, a resident of eastern Tibet, has been arrested by the Chinese authorities for the fourth time in 5 years. This time, she has been arbitrarily arrested and subjected to a 10-day so-called administrative detention by the local police in Yushu, Tibet. The Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy is condemning the relentless persecution of Tsering Tso and is calling on the Chinese government to uphold the principles of equality and non-discrimination enshrined in its constitution. Let us learn more about Tsering Tso's arrest and reasons behind her detention in Tibet. For that, we have invited English researcher from the Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy, Mr. Ngawang Lungtok. Welcome to our program, Ngawang.
Thank you for having me.
To begin with, can you tell us who is Tsering Tso and why is Chinese government or authorities targeting her in Tibet?
This is the fourth time in 5 years Tsering Tso has been detained by the Public Security Bureau officers for criticizing the discriminatory policies and practices by the Chinese Communist Party inside Tibet, and for advocating for the local people to apply for a passport in the Yushu Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. Part of the reason why she has been constantly surveilled and monitored is because she has been an alumnus of a leadership workshop initiated by the US State Department. And ever since she participated in that workshop, she has been constantly surveilled, monitored, and threatened, harassed, intimidated, and arbitrarily detained for at least 5 times, but in four times in the last 5 years. And she's from Tika County, Tsolo, in Yushu Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture, runs a travel agency called Tibet World Tours and Travel. She operates travel both inside Tibet, in Tibet Autonomous Region as well, and outside in different parts of the world as well.
And you have just mentioned Tsering Tso has been detained several times, and this is 4th time in 5 years. So under what Chinese government or Chinese authorities in Tibet in the region called as administrative detention, right? So what does administrative detention mean?
Well, administrative detention mainly involves detaining individuals without any trial and for either minor or no offenses at all, just for criticizing or not abiding by the Chinese Communist Party's law and policies. And it can entail various implementations such as re-education through labor, which China claims it has abolished in 2013. But as we all know, what China claims on paper is what it rarely implements. And then there's another sort of detention for education. And administrative detention undermines criminal justice system in China and Tibet because it denies the falsely accused victim of the right to legal representation. And it's the administrative detention mainly comes under the Public Security Administration punishment law. So this department overlooks administrative detention, and the detention can occur for a week, lasting up to months. And as we all know, China in the year 2017, it revised its criminal procedure law, introducing a new article, Article 73, legitimizing or legalizing residential surveillance at designated location, further curtailing freedom of fundamental human rights of Tibetans inside Tibet.
And what is being done or involved within this 10 to 15 days detention?
Yeah, as I've mentioned before, the main attempt is to re-educate the person. And of course, as we all know, behind the curtains, Tibetans are brutally beaten, assaulted. In the case of Tsering Tso, this officer named Jamga from the Immigration Administration Division of the Public Security Administration, Yushu Prefecture, Jamga apparently kicked Tsering Tso on her head, face, abdomen, chest during the detention. And despite the severity of her condition reported by her husband as well as her friends, both the prefectural as well as provincial PSB doctors falsely concluded that she hasn't sustained any severe injuries despite doing so. So such malpractices or ill treatment often occurs in administrative detention.
And was it right after her return from US, like you said, she went to attend a conference?
It was in 2017. 2017 was the first time she was arbitrarily detained and punished. Yes.
And Tsering Tso is like consistently she has used social media, and in Tibet Douyin, which is like TikTok,
Yes.
right? So through those social media platforms, she has uploaded videos of her exposing the Chinese government or the local authorities' injustices or the discrimination to the public, right? So what was she actually saying in those videos? Because it's mainly in Chinese.
Yes.
And what do you make of this whole overall Tsering Tso's objection or fight toward this injustice?
She's basically fighting racial discrimination inside Tibet against Tibetans who are apparently the real owners of the land. So yeah, she's fighting against that. And in her videos, even if you look at her previous videos as well, she has constantly fought against discriminatory policy against Tibetan. And in the recent video, she criticizes the Chinese Communist Party authorities of having a feudalistic mindset by ignoring the wishes and plight of the ordinary people, by practicing, a crony capitalism of sort, by favoring the already rich through the use of state party agencies. Like if you look at one of her statements, if I may be allowed to refer to my notes in order to not misrepresent. So she claims that while travel agencies in China can operate independently in China, inside Tibet is a different case. Inside Tibet, the travel agencies are controlled by one or two entities, mainly Lhasa Communications Industry Group Company, and this monopoly is also supported by Border Management Office. The Chinese State Department's Border Management Office supports Lhasa Communication Industry Group Company to monopolize tourism inside Tibet, enabling the Lhasa Transportation Industry Group to charge high rates without any competition, because there's no competition, right? And such monopolization enabling not only the rich to get richer in China, especially the state-owned agencies to get richer in China, but also further marginalizing Tibetans inside Tibet, and therefore directly contradicting the Chinese government party's claim that the Tibet Autonomous Region, as well as the wider Tibet, is developing, but the main recipient or the true beneficiaries of such developments are not Tibetans, but Chinese and those related to the Chinese Communist Party authority.
These malpractices and by the agency and racial discrimination that we see in this case exposed from through Tsering Tso's case this time. So what does it say about the law and order of the Chinese government in Tibet?
It basically says that there is no law and order inside Tibet, and it's also quite peculiar that Tibetans continue to encounter difficulties in obtaining the Chinese passport, despite China's loud proclamation to the world that Tibet is an integral part of China. So such an obstacle suggests that deep down, Tibet is still regarded as a distinct region and Tibetan as a distinct nationality by the Chinese Communist Party. And there's also arbitrary arrest and detention that is frequent inside Tibet, undermining the criminal justice system, and China's constant harassment and detention of Tsering Tso for merely opposing racial discrimination contradicts a commitment it has made under international treaties it has signed and ratified, such as the International Covenant on Economic and Social Rights, ICESR, and the Convention Against Torture, both of which China has signed and ratified, perpetually claiming to uphold whatever the amendments, legal treaties that are mentioned in the convention. So these treaties basically obligate China to respect the fundamental rights of individuals, fundamental right of freedom of expression, freedom from racial discrimination, and protection against torture and ill treatment. By constantly targeting and surveilling Tsering Tso, China violates these fundamental principles and undermines its obligation to uphold human rights as stipulated in these treaties.
So far, what we see is Tsering Tso's being vocal about the discrimination has a very strong defense towards the Chinese government in Tibet, right? So, like her case, can you talk to us about the other cases of Tibetans' dissent against the Chinese government's injustices or racial discrimination that is taking place in Tibet right now?
As of recently, we have the case of Ngawang Lungtok, who was released a few years ago. According to the center's correspondence with lawyer Lin Chile, Chinese human rights lawyer Lin Chile, who also tried to represent many of the Hong Kong dissenters and protesters, we found out that Ngawang Lungtok, even post-release, he was subjected to constant harassment, torture, and even one time while he was resting on a lawn, few of the masked men came and beat him up and took him to an undisclosed location. And when he was eventually released, all the hospitals and hotels denied giving him any rooms or any treatments. So as of recently, Ngawang Lungtok can be a good example. And Tsering Tso, not to mention, is still, this is the 5th time she's been detained, 4th time in the last 5 years.
And from your center, what do you wish to appeal to the Chinese government in Tsering Tso's case?
We call on the Chinese Communist Party to uphold the treaties it has signed and ratified, and also uphold the principles of equality and non-discrimination enshrined in its constitution. In the Article 4 of the Chinese Constitution, and I quote, "All ethnic groups of the People's Republic of China are equal. The state shall protect the lawful rights and interests of all ethnic minorities and uphold and promote relations of equality, unity, mutual assistance, and harmony of all ethnic groups. Discrimination against oppression of any ethnic group are prohibited. Any act that undermines the unity of ethnic groups or create divisions among them is prohibited." However, as I've mentioned before, all of us know that what China claims on paper, it rarely implements and often drastically differs from its actual practices. The government's main focus is on how to keep itself in power, and every implementation of the government is thereby coming from that intention. Our main, we urge the Chinese Communist Party, we urge the Chinese state to treat Tibetans equally, to respect, even in the concluding observation following the China's Universal Periodic Review in 2018, the UN Racial Committee on Discrimination specifically mentions that China must revise its regulations and practices regarding the passport issuance and not discriminate against Tibetans, whether be, to travel inside Tibet or abroad. So we have the same recommendation. We urge the Chinese Communist Party to follow those, basically uphold the treaties it has perpetually signed and ratified, perpetually agreed to follow, which it doesn't, of course. So yeah, we're basically urging them to follow whatever they have agreed upon. I also forgot to add that the vague and trumped up charges levied on Tsering Tso, such as disrupting social stability, picking quarrels and provoking trouble, is often used against human rights defenders, activists, dissenters, writers, intellectuals, leaders of minority groups, basically anyone who's seen as disloyal by the Chinese Communist Party. It is a legal tool to force people to agree with the official government narrative and to stop them for further questioning or opposing the policies and implementations of the Chinese Communist Party. Whether at the central level or at the local level, the government decides what is allowed, what is not allowed. And it is also clearly evident in its obligation with the international treaties as well. Xi Jinping often states that the Chinese Communist Party won't follow the West's definition of human rights, but it will follow its own version or understanding of human rights according to its own cultural context and cultural and social context, thereby trying to, again, evade accountability for all the human rights atrocities it commits inside Tibet.
Xi Jinping's version of human rights, which also sound as more oppression and more in Tibet, right? So, Lungdola, thank you so much for talking to us on Tsering Tso's case today for this program. Thank you so much. With this, we have come to the end of today's program of In Conversation with Tibettv. Thank you so much for watching.